Everyone. I still don't know whether I'm actually live. It does say, it does have a red signal up there, so I'm going to just assume and I'll just keep talking. Okay, so we're about 11:30 Sunday night, but I thought I'd jump on just to recap the fact that the Low Carb Summit weekend is drawing to an end, where their free access for day 3 presentations is about to end at midnight tonight. But I managed to get through quite a few of the video sessions. I mentioned earlier in a short live clip today that I had watched the first 2 presentations by Dr. James Muki, who had a few of those slides that I managed to actually post up, which was to do with, what a healthy liver looks like and what a fatty liver looks like after only a short amount of time. The other one is also about a group of dietitians, and they were talking about their success case study, cases that they had with people who had, different, like irritable bowel syndrome, epilepsy. What was the other one? She had a fatty liver, but she was very thin and didn't weigh that much, so she wasn't actually obese, but she still had fatty liver syndrome. So it all came down to a matter of just the whole diet, the whole nutrition side of things, which is so important, and being able to manage and control your condition, especially with type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes and things. So I thought I would just, while we've got a few minutes before they actually just close the access, go into, we're going to browse, just a couple of tabs so that you can have a quick little look at basically what I was checking out today. And so I will just share my screen. Bear with me. Okay, so here is basically the lineup that they had. That is Dr. James Mook. This lady here was actually very good, Dr. Lucy Burns, and she went through these stages of like, you have that denial of whether you think you sort of like, no, you look okay, when really deep down you actually want to do something about it, but you're just putting it all off. And then just the next stage of just making that decision, and then doing that sort of commitment and the whole phase, and then moving into like the what they call the maintenance kind of phase, which up until that time, which I feel I'm actually in that phase where I have actually shared my story. There are people now that know, they can see the before and after, but you do get to a stage where the wow factor is no longer there, and it's being able to just maintain your lifestyle based on the fact that you don't get the external kind of validation or the external kind of congratulations and things. So it's like, how do you maintain that way of eating and the way that you actually, because it's not those short-term diet things. It is basically how you will continue to actually nourish your body. So when you don't have external validation, how do you call on your internal mindset and body to still continue with this way of eating and this health journey path that you're on that's continuous and things? And then so there's like those little things about whether you fall off the wagon and whether that's really right. I mean, have you actually failed when you start to have those moments where you start eating a little bit more of maybe those foods that you had resisted and stopped for a while? And is that actual failure, or is that actually just normal, and you just deal with it, but you continue on because you haven't really gone back to the start, to the beginning. You may feel that with your mindset thinking, oh, you've got the guilt because it's like, oh my gosh, instead of, for example, I normally have one keto choc chip muffin, but this time around I had 2 or maybe 3, and it's like, uh-oh, are these warning signals? Something's about to happen. Am I about to actually go back to my old habits that I've had for many years? But the whole key is it's not like that. Just reframe your mind from actually thinking like that, because it isn't. It's when you get into that feelings of those guilt and feeling like your self-confidence is probably going down, then it's just a matter of like making those small little changes. And I think we've actually said that before. You just make those tiny little changes which can make a big difference as each day actually progresses. So that's what she was going on about. This one, was interesting in respect that I like the new book that Dr. Jason Fung has out, which is the Cancer Code, which, believe it or not, it does go back into your diet and your nutrition as to how your body can actually respond to, say, the cancer, because apparently cancer will thrive on living cells. And when you've got that insulin sort of resistance or whatever, when it's actually high in your body and everything's sort of like all out of whack, then you're creating that environment for those cancer cells to actually thrive. So he's got a great book, The Cancer Code. I'm currently actually going through his Obesity Code book. That's what I'm listening at the moment. It's an audio book on that one. Now, midlife stress. What was the other one? These two were actually interesting because they deal with clients. Obviously, there was a doctor, and then there was a dietitian, nutritionist, and it was interesting because they were actually talking about how they would sometimes have clients come in, and they are given dietary guidelines from, say, the Australian dietary guidelines, which may, for somebody who's on low carb, high fat, is quite different. It's almost like it's in conflict with how they actually sort of would give a meal plan, and then how somebody approaching it from the low carb, high fat way of eating, which is the way of eating that I do, sometimes it can actually be in conflict. And I think it's either they referenced it, or it could have actually been one of these other ones that actually referenced this site. And I'll put a link to this one. This guy here is fairly well known, Dr. David Unwin, and he has these great infographics. And I recommend you just download them all. But I did, and he looks, and I'll go through them here, where he basically looks at, for example, bread, and puts the equivalent of what it is in a teaspoon of sugar, a 4-gram teaspoon of just normal sugar. So your white bread here is equivalent, and it's a small slice, is equivalent to about 3.7 teaspoons of sugar. Now I know, and this one, which I thought was interesting, because I actually used to eat rye bread, and that's actually more than the white bread on here. And even this one, the whole perception about whole grain barley bread, and that's actually a lot higher than your white bread. So, and oatmeal, who doesn't like porridge? But you think about it, oatmeal is actually equivalent to this, And then, of course, what do you normally do with oatmeal? Well, you put sugar on it. So people put sugar, or they put honey, which is 70% sugar, on top of it as well. So it just builds on. And then when you continuously have that every day, is it any wonder then that that you get into that position where diabetes is, type 2 in particular, is an epidemic? So that was an interesting one that you did on breads. This is the one that you did on cereal. I sort of knew that these cereals would be actually right up there. I was surprised of cornflakes being the one with the highest number of teaspoons of sugar on that one. But again, what do you normally do with cornflakes? You sprinkle sugar on it. Sometimes you do sprinkle sugar on these things. Okay, so, there's actually the porridge there. So what was the other one? Oatmeal. Okay. I was going to say, what's the difference? Anyway, Special K. What? Who looks at these things and thinks, oh, that's probably a lot healthier than all those other ones, right? Well, yeah, it's half, but it's still a Special K cereal serving, and the serving size is only like 30 grams, which isn't much. Small bowl. I mean, who has more than 30 grams of these kind of cereals? And there's four teaspoons immediately from that. Like I said, I'll give you the link under this particular live so you can download these yourself. So he does an example here of a so-called healthy breakfast, which is a cereal, toast, and your fruit juice. And look at this, the breakdown. Even that's just plain milk, right? And I think it's 250 mils would be about 1 cup. So that's only like half a cup. And 1 slice of brown toast. So already you've got 16 teaspoons of sugar just within that, in that one, that sort of typical kind of breakfast that you have. This is the next one. Rice. Basmati rice. Wow. Over normal plain white rice. Wow. Basmati rice 10.1. Things. And again, it's just that's not much of a serving size. And how much do we actually put on our plates? Now, I personally, ever since I started the first challenge, I actually don't eat rice or potatoes, French fries. No, pasta, I've replaced it with zucchini zoodles, if that's what you call them. Sweet corn. Now, I have in a few of my cooking recipes that I've done, taken 1 cob of corn and basically cut off the kernels and put that in. But yeah, corn, not really. I don't really eat that often. It's only within that one, but then I don't really eat it, sort of dish it out anyway too much. Frozen peas, we don't really have frozen vegetables anymore. Banana. Now, can I just tell you a really interesting story about banana? And I heard this on the men's panel on that low carb high weekend, where 1 banana, now I think the guy actually using it and said it was equivalent to like 6 teaspoons of sugar, 1 banana, because it's very high in carbs. And another guy was actually just saying that they don't actually, because of the way that the bananas are somehow sort of artificially, or just the way that they're actually growing in the soil, the fertilizer, so they have got there is that sort of like sweetness about it, that they found that when they were feeding those bananas to monkeys in the zoo, they were all getting diabetes. So they stopped it. So when you actually Google it, you actually do see this thing about monkeys in the zoo and diabetes, and the actual different type of foods that they actually do give them at times. So yeah, the fact that some of these zoos have actually stopped feeding bananas to the monkeys because they can't handle that high sugar content and they're getting diabetes. Is it any wonder then if we're actually sort of having bananas in our foods as well? So yeah, it's quite enlightening actually what you can see from all of this. An apple. Now, the other interesting story was like, and I'm not quite sure whether they've got it on here, but the juices, type of juice. Is that the type of fruit? Probably. See, that apple's about the same, right? Broccoli, eggs, which is basically a very popular food source for those on the low carb, high fat, keto diet. Broccoli, yeah. Most of your greens are actually really are fine to actually have as your food item, because you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, if I'm going to cut out all of that, or I'm going to make an effort to reduce that, what the heck am I going to eat? There's tons of things that you can actually eat, especially when you're talking about the high fat protein, because that's all your meats, your red meats, your chickens, your fish, and all the side dishes would be all the greens that you can have, the broccoli, the cauliflower, zucchinis, eggplant, capsicums. There's a lot of other stuff that that can do it. It's just a matter of it's just changing those things, and you will actually find that your cravings for the way that you used to eat will actually reduce down as well and things. So I'll talk about the juice here. The juice, I think they said an equivalent, it's almost like juice and the sugar content in juice, like apple juice or orange juice, is almost equivalent to if you were to drink a glass of Coke or lemonade, because the sugar level is actually quite high in those juices, because they basically extract all the fiber. It's a glass of apple juice is equivalent to 6 apples, right? So normally you wouldn't actually eat 6 apples in a day or in one sitting, but when you're drinking a glass of apple juice, that's exactly what you're doing, but you're minus the fiber, which is the natural part of if you were to eat a natural apple. So is it any wonder then that is that perception again of oh, I'm going to have a fruit juice, but then it's just got to be careful about what's actually in the juice. What have they put in the juice and things. So if you did want to actually have an apple, I would actually recommend you just eat an actual natural apple, a proper apple, than to actually drink the juice itself and things. So that's just the sugar level on that one. What's the next one? Okay. Wow. Okay. So a boiled potato that's cooked, 9.1, 150 grams, 150 grams. Yeah, that's probably the size of a medium to fairly large potato. And if you cut them in cubes and things like that, and what do we sometimes have with our potatoes if we make a potato salad? Oh, can you just imagine? Raisins. I used to eat boxes of raisins. No wonder why I used to eat boxes of raisins, because they had a sugar content. It was feeding into my sugar addiction thing. So yeah, here's this suggestion: cabbage. Basically any of the Chinese vegetables are good for you. Obviously, don't cook them in the Chinese type of sauce and things, but you can just saute them with a lot of seasoning and some butter and garlic. It's quite nice. And yeah, because what they're saying is a good average of sugar per day would only be about 1.5 teaspoons and things. So already we've been seeing that it's more than 1 teaspoon in some of these actual food sources. That was quite a surprise. I mean, I always thought natural honey, right? But like I said, that's 70% made up of sugar, honey. There's your apple juice there, 4.3 teaspoons for 100 mils. Now that's less than a half of a cup. And things. So where are we going? Obviously green foods, white, brown, or green food. Yeah. But I mean, that's a good thing about a lot of us because, I mean, well, those ones who actually cook dinner, I don't consider myself a gourmet cook, but I am confident enough to actually sort of know how to sort of cook some things and use seasoning to actually help with the taste and the flavor. And just to the point that it's like, well, you know, it's food for fuel rather than food for comfort, which is another sort of mindset shift when you do these things. So I thought that was actually quite interesting. So I'll put it down. So that I'll put that link, which is the public health collaboration, but that guy is actually quite well renowned, Dr. David Unwin and things. So yep. Now, the other thing I want to just finish off is when you are looking at low carb, high fat, obviously because it's an area where we still have to build up an awareness and a knowledge and, you know, about it with people, that it's interesting to see now up here, because I've scrolled all the way down below, but up here in Australia, in this low carb down under, they do have a sort of a listing of doctors that are, you know, either they're familiar or they recommend it to their patients, which is always useful. You know, my personal doctor, we basically are educating him on the whole thing, but it's easy to sort of go to your doctor and they have a different opinion and they're looking at, you know, data. And I'm not quite sure what kind of data they're looking at because I would actually always try and research that one as well, rather than just totally blindly follow what they actually say to you. But this site here, and I'll put this link on there as well, has a listing of various doctors that would be familiar with that kind of diet and would probably recommend them as a way of having having nutrition fill that gap, or having nutrition play a bigger role than just going along to a doctor and being prescribed medication. Okay, so, but down here, and this is where I had to go all the way down here because obviously that's still Australia, to find whether they had any in New Zealand. And there is a very short list, mainly in Auckland. You got them over here. There's a Nelson one, Dunedin, Christchurch, and I was having a look at this one because these guys, they do have a clinic in Wellington, but they offer programs. They're actually online, and I thought that was actually quite useful. So I was having a little look around at them. I mean, they've got 3 types of programs that they have there. It's led by this guy, this doctor here, but they have the testimonials are always good, right? The fact that they've got patients and they've got videos, and they're 100% dedicated to helping people with diabetes. I think they actually say that on their homepage. Yeah. So they're actually dedicated to this, but they provide it through online programs. And so I'll put, I mean, they're in here, right? You can find them in here when you scroll. But I just thought that that's actually quite interesting because that one is based in New Zealand. Here's their video testimonials from various people on what they went through. So, and that's delivered all online. So I thought that was actually quite useful. it's always useful if you can actually have like a medical person that has some idea of that particular type of diet. Anyway, all right, so I will now stop sharing. Okay, so that's what I just wanted to share with you tonight. So that whole weekend, it's informative. I certainly got quite a few things out of it, because it's all part of that building up that knowledge base and being able to be confident about what you're doing, to know that what you are doing is actually having good results, and it's not just you, there are other people as well, and getting answers to questions that they may have that you sort of have been thinking about as well. So that's my recap of the Low Carb Weekend Summit that I was working my way through this weekend. And tomorrow let's see what tomorrow actually brings, right? But I will be back with something that I just want to share. But by all means, have a really nice morning, Monday, when you wake up, because obviously now it's going to tick over to Monday for us down here in this part of the world. And yeah, I'll leave it at that, and I will catch you again tomorrow.